Everyone talks about a player's talent or film during the NFL draft, including myself, but where they land is just as important, if not more. So today I'm breaking down the perfect fantasy football fits for the top 12 prospects in this year's NFL draft. We're talking about landing spots in this video that can turn rookies into becoming immediate fantasy football contributors and difference makers. Now let's start with a guy who could line up next to CeeDee Lamb right away in year one and still drop 1,000 yards as a rookie. And that has to do with exactly what the Dallas Cowboys were doing this offseason. Here's their team changes page. This is a part of the Fantasy Blueprint. You can get it now, link down below over on Patreon, and join the other thousands of people who are getting it. This offseason, they got rid of Brandon Cooks. They did not re-sign him. They only added Paris Campbell, as you can see right here above my head. So their wide receiver room right now for the Dallas Cowboys is CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, and then a bunch of other guys. Kevontae Turpin, who's mostly a special teams player. So insert the first prospect that we'll be talking about, and that is going to be the wide receiver out of Arizona, who I believe is the best wide receiver in this draft, and that is Tet McMillan, who I think gives them something that they don't currently have. This is a big body wide receiver in McMillan on the outside who could stretch the field, move the chains, while CeeDee Lamb continues to operate as a highly efficient inside and outside player. Because in college, McMillan played 78% of the time on the outside, but don't sleep on his ability to move into the slot. He played 22% of the time there in college and found success. Now, there were a lot of concerns at the NFL Combine that McMillan didn't come out and run fast enough, and he said he doesn't watch a lot of tape, which is fine. Most guys don't. They just don't come out and say it, so he probably should have kept that quiet. But at his pro day, he ran a 4.53 40 time. Who knows how much we can trust the pro day, but based on his size, 89th percentile speed score according to Player Profiler, that's really good. He's a flexible player for his size, and I think in general he's a nice fit for what the Cowboys need at pick 12 overall in the first round, a difference maker on offense. Like, he perfectly complements CeeDee Lamb, who lined up in the slot 74% of the time last year. It's going to take way more attention away from Lamb in the middle of the field, meaning even more yards after the catchability for the elite Dallas receiver. If you're not familiar, McMillan has been probably the most productive wide receiver in this draft class. He has back-to-back years of over 1,300 yards, a 28 and 31% target share. He's great. He's awesome all the way around. And now if he was to join this Dallas team led by Dak Prescott, who threw 36 touchdown passes the last time he was healthy in 2023, the fourth most attempts, the third most passing yards, led the league that year with 36 touchdown passes. Like, this offense wants to throw the ball a lot. And you could just see based on their backfield right now, they have nobody back there. Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, like, these guys aren't going to get the job done. They're going to be a pass-first offense again. And if we just look at the depth chart that you could see right here, I mean, Jalen Tolbert and CeeDee Lamb as your 1 and 2. Obviously, Lamb's great. Tolbert, I think, is more so a 3 than a 2. I think adding a wide receiver at 12, hopefully it's McMillan, maybe it'll be another guy that we'll talk about in this video, is going to be awesome. I think it continues to make CeeDee Lamb a better player with less attention, especially in 2 wide receiver sets, and it only benefits McMillan if he has somebody like Lamb drawing attention away as well. Next up, let's go over to the Rams, where I think that they could be adding a very interesting receiver. So if we look at their offseason, they obviously lost Cooper Kupp, who is not a running back, and we'll adjust this on the fly right here. He is a wide receiver, of course, and then they lost DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. Okay, they re-signed Tutu Atwell, and their big addition was Davante Adams. So we know that this team right now has a lot of talented wide receivers, right? You have Puka Nacua, arguably the best wide receiver in the league right now, up there with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Davante Adams, who had that title at one point in his career, but is still, as recent as last year, despite being 32, a highly productive receiver. Tutu Atwell currently slides in as the number 3 on this team after re-signing for about $10 million this offseason, but I think there's another player that they can add to this team, a player that can honestly take them. They're maybe a top 3 team in the NFC right now, the Rams. This player, wide receiver, could take them over the hump to be like a Super Bowl contender. And that guy is wide receiver Emeka Egbuka. I haven't seen many people point to Egbuka going to the Rams right now. Maybe the Rams make more sense to try and target a wide receiver in the 3rd or 4th round since they signed Adams this offseason, but why not add another guy who played 81% of his snaps out of the slot last year, 81% of those snaps in college, where he was very productive, probably the best route runner in this draft class in my opinion. And if you put him into the slot, Davante Adams and Puka Nacua on the outside, how are you stopping this offense with Matthew Stafford at quarterback? Basically, he would replace Cooper Kupp as that like short area quickness type player that can just be leaned on by Stafford. Now, Egbuka is a very talented wide receiver. He broke out back in 2022, and then in 2024, despite playing next to Jeremiah Smith, a true freshman standout receiver, he was still able to top 1,000 yards, earn 24% of the targets because he dominated out of the slot while dealing with a little bit of an injury as well, playing banged up and gimped up in a couple of those games. If he joined this team, he would become right away the clear number 3 receiver on the team, in my opinion. It would be Adams and Nacua on the outside in 3 wide receiver sets with Egbuka in the slot. And again, I just don't know how you stop that. I think this is a plug and play opportunity for him to learn from these 2 elite wide receivers in his first year, and then maybe Adams moves on next year, and now you're looking at Egbuka being a top 2 wide receiver for the Rams moving forward, which gives him some dynasty value, assuming Stafford's going to be there for a few more years. Let's continue to talk about wide receivers and go over to the 49ers, where they've had a lot of things going on this offseason. Okay, so what has happened with them? Obviously, they ended up losing and trading away Deebo Samuel, a wide receiver. They ended up right now only adding Demarcus Robinson. We know that Brandon Ayuk might not be ready for week 1 due to his injury. He is his knee injury. So what does this team and their depth chart currently look like? In terms of healthy players, it's looking like the number 1 receiver week 1, if Ayuk's not ready, is Juwan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall, the number 2, who did show some flashes towards the end of last year, but still not a ton. And Demarcus Robinson, your number 3, who has been, depending on the team that he's been on, either a key contributor or an afterthought like when he was on the Chiefs. I'm not feeling that confident with that surrounding class, especially if Ayuk, there's been some rumors that he could be traded away. We have Christian McCaffrey dealing with injury. George Kittle is getting up there in age. Like, they might need to draft a playmaker, and I think they should. And that's where you can enter Luther Burton, who honestly might be the easiest or most natural Deebo Samuel replacement in this entire draft if they can land him in the second round. Burton played 85% of his snaps out of the slot, and over his last 3 years in college, he was averaging over 10 rush attempts per year. He was a productive player on the ground as well. He brings the same yards after the catch ability, which Kyle Shanahan loves in his offense with the 49ers, and gadget type style like a Deebo Samuel brought. He's not a 1-for-1 replacement, but it's close. He's a player who broke out in 2023, and after his 2023 season of 86 catches, over 1,200 yards, a massive 33% target share, after that, it looked like he was going to be a bona fide first-round pick, but everything fell off this past year. Production almost cut in half to 676 yards. He was dealing with some injuries as well during those games. Bad quarterback play. The system didn't look as good as it did the year before, so there's a lot of explanations as to why it fell off. But San Francisco needs some cheaper playmakers as Brock Purdy's extension is nearing, and right now they're in some negotiations for it. Like, they need some cheaper pieces on this offense. And I think Burton answers that question as somebody that you don't have to spend a first-round pick on, so you don't have to give him that 5th-year option. You could just spend a 4th-round pick that cost even less money, right? And if they use him creatively, Burton can be this year's biggest potential rookie breakout if Ayuk isn't able to return on time or look the same. We'll stick with the wide receiver position. Even though this is a loaded running back class, the wide receivers are going to get a lot of first-round buzz here just naturally because wide receivers get taken early. Let's talk about a wide receiver who can fit the Seattle Seahawks team. The Seahawks lost DK Metcalf in a trade this year to the Steelers. They lost their wide receiver in Tyler Lockett, a veteran. At least right now, they haven't re-signed him. Who they bring in? Well, they got Cooper Kupp. That's a good addition. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who right now looks like the wide receiver 3 on this team behind Kupp and JSN. But I think there's another wide receiver that could really tie this room together. You have JSN, you have Cooper Kupp. Those are 2 like slot inside wide receivers. As of right now, your downfield burner is going to be either a Jake Bobo, who's been on the team for a couple of years, although lacks a lot of speed. He does have the size, or an MVS who has the speed. He just has the consistency issues, inconsistent hands, inconsistent separation. So I'm not really sure I want to rely on this guy to be the guy who gets me buckets downfield and creates a more vertical offense. Instead, I'd rather spend my draft pick in the first round on a guy like Matthew Golden out of Texas, who I think perfectly fits the bill here for the outside wide receiver, that outside deep threat that Seattle needs in their offense right now. This is a guy who ran 76% of his snaps on the outside last year. He goes to the NFL Combine and runs a 4.29 40 time, the fastest at the Combine amongst receivers. Now, I will say there's a little bit of murmurs on this 4.29 40 time. Like, did he get a favorable start because he didn't run his second 40 time, which usually if you run this fast, you might as well run and see if you could make it even faster. He just immediately took off his shoes almost as if to say like, oh, I'm even surprised I ran that fast. But either way, that's the number that we have down, a 4.29 40 time. Impressive. And I mean, the fit is so natural in this offense. The fit is extremely natural and gives Sam Darnold an option to throw to downfield. Like, you're going to have JSN as a slot receiver. You're going to have Cooper Kupp as well as a slot receiver. Like, these 2 guys, especially Kupp in 3 wide receiver sets, going to move into the slot. Who can you rely on the outside? We saw JSN threaten vertically, especially in games where DK Metcalf was hurt last year and he found some success, but he's not known for that. Why not get a guy, Matthew Golden, who is known for that? I think that new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak is going to want to get vertical in this offense. Like, we saw it last year. That's why he brought Marquez Valdes-Scantling with him over from the Saints. He loved taking those shots to MVS, even Olave at times, definitely Rashid Shaheed while he was healthy. He's going to take those shots this year, and if it's to Golden, watch out. Now let's go to the New York Giants because I think there's a wide receiver who fits their team nicely. You can see they didn't really make a lot of moves this offseason in terms of adding in moves. Yeah, their quarterbacks, Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Other than that, they added James Hudson, a right tackle, and just some depth pieces in terms of the offensive line, receivers in Zach Pascal, Little Jordan Humphrey. But I do think they still need some firepower on offense. They kind of addressed the quarterback situation this offseason. Could they still draft one? Sure, but I think they're going to ride with Jameis and Russell Wilson. And I think right now their pass catchers are a little bit lacking. Like, we know Malik Neighbors is great, but even last year he started to get double teamed. It started to become a problem. Wan'Dale Robinson is just a short area guy. He's not going to do much for you downfield. They re-signed Darius Slayton, who's been a nice option for them. He has speed and size on the outside. He's a little bit older now, approaching 30 years old, and he's probably a wide receiver 3 for you. But why not go out there and get a guy who can change everything for your offense and open up opportunities for Malik Neighbors in one Travis Hunter? Yes, Travis Hunter, I think the Giants should make a wide receiver. I think Hunter should be going into this draft wanting to be a receiver, not this duo cornerback wide receiver, even though he mostly played cornerback in college in terms of in the film room every single week. week in preparation, you're going to make a lot more money as a wide receiver. Now, in college, Hunter played 61% of the time out of the slot, 39% out wide, and Neighbors last year played 63% out wide, 37% out of the slot. These guys complement each other nicely. They can both be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, and they can both be motioned or move into the slot in 3 wide receiver sets, which creates a lot of deception for an offense. Because Hunter brings a lot more juice to this offense. He brings shiftiness, yards after the catch ability. He's a screen game merchant, and he complements Neighbors' downfield mentality nicely. Like, sure, Hunter can also go win downfield, but why not let him dominate those short to intermediate parts of the field while Neighbors continues to dominate the intermediate and deep? The Giants were already 8th in pass attempts last year. Some of that was because they were trailing in games, but imagine now if they keep that same top 10 pass rate and actually start to get some better quarterback play. Because they just added 2 aggressive quarterbacks. We know Jameis Winston is definitely aggressive. He's not scared of throwing the ball at any point to any part of the field, and Russell Wilson is also known for throwing downfield as well. I mean, this is a guy in Jameis Winston who made Jerry Jeudy a wide receiver 1 in fantasy down the stretch, and a guy in Russell Wilson who continued to sustain George Pickens for monster weeks last year. The biggest question for Hunter will be if he lands on the Giants, will they let him just be playing wide receiver nonstop? I'm hoping it's more than 20 snaps a game, but if he hits 20 to 25 with Jameis Winston as his quarterback say, he's going to be a problem. All right, now let's talk about the best running back in the draft, as many people believe, and we're going to talk about Ashton Jeanty and what happens if he lands on the Chicago Bears. If so, fantasy managers should be sprinting to draft him in the first round of their fantasy leagues. Yes, the first round. Because the Bears are a totally different team this year. I mean, let's just look at what they've done this offseason. They got Jonah Jackson in a trade. They got Joe Thuney in a trade. So they improved their offensive line, and then they signed the best center on the offensive market, most likely him and Ryan Kelly and Drew Dahlman. I think he was the best center, top 5 center last year in my opinion. So they improved their offensive line to put Caleb Williams entering year 2 behind it. And we know they also got their new coach and play caller in Ben Johnson from the Lions, the best available on the market in years. And I think if he landed on this team, he would immediately become the workhorse back. Like, push aside DeAndre Swift. Sure, he was at times the engine of this offense last year, and I do think Swift could once again be the workhorse on this team if he avoids a running back landing there. But if Jeanty is there, that means the Bears are spending a top 10 pick on him in the NFL draft. He's going to be starting on this team behind a revamped offensive line with a creative offensive coordinator, and we already saw it last year when he has time, a talented quarterback in Caleb Williams. I mean, last year alone with the Lions, Ben Johnson was able to produce 29 rushing touchdowns, tied for the second most in the league, and if Jeanty enters that situation, he could feast right away. If you're not familiar, Jeanty was a beast last year, over 2,600 rushing yards alone. When you factor in his receiving yards, he went for almost 2,800 total yards. He scored 30 touchdowns. He was an absolute monster, a workhorse. He was right up there setting all records in college football. I mean, the guy was unreal. His best skill set is just his bowling ball ability. Like, his contact balance is insane. It's hard to tackle this guy. Let's stick with the running back position and talk about Amarion Hampton out of UNC. And I think that if he lands on the Broncos, he could easily become one of the best running backs in fantasy right away and be somebody that you're taking in the second round of your drafts. Like, the Denver Broncos haven't had a true workhorse running back in like 3 years. Javonte Williams' first year before he had his devastating knee injury. And now Javonte Williams is gone. Like, Javonte is gone. They didn't bring any running backs in to replace him. They don't have much guys. We'll talk about their backfield in a second. But last year, this was a team that their leading rusher was Javonte, who was insanely inefficient, only put up 513 yards. It was a split backfield where their quarterback, Bo Nix, was almost their leading rusher as a rookie with 430 yards. Like, you need something better than that, especially since they were dealing with a pretty good offensive line. In terms of PFF, this was the number 1 run win blocking rate and number 2 overall offensive line. And that second overall, to clarify, also brings in pass protection. So it was a good line all around. The only thing missing from this backfield was getting a running back who could actually create on his own, and that's exactly what Hampton did in college. I mean, this is a guy who showed out at the NFL Combine. The speed score, 93rd percentile. The burst, 92nd percentile. Anything close to 100th percentile is great. You come down to what he did in terms of his stats. Back-to-back years of 1,500 yards. Like, there are some people out there saying that Amarion Hampton is a better running back prospect in this draft class than Ashton Jeanty. I don't see it, but I do kind of get their points in terms of the production, and he at least tested at the Combine, so we know he's a super athlete as well. And if he landed in the first round, which right now he's expected to go around pick 20, and that's exactly where the Denver Broncos are picking. If he landed on this depth chart with Audric Estime, who had problems last year just being productive, staying on the field, not fumbling, and Jaleel McLaughlin, who's a satellite back at best, not a workhorse, he would easily become, especially with first round draft capital, the 5th-year option, the workhorse running back for Sean Payton, who has created so many beneficial situations for running backs in the past, and an offense that showed a lot of promise behind a good offensive line. Hampton would be 3rd round pick, at least in fantasy drafts. Next up, let's talk about the Cowboys running back situation, because there's a lot to unpack here. They obviously lose Rico Dowdle this offseason. I shouldn't say obviously, but he signs with the Carolina Panthers. Their running backs are Javonte Williams, who we just talked about, signed like a backup running back deal, and then they brought in Miles Sanders. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be able to survive with this as their backfield. They need somebody who's much faster, much more dynamic, and somebody they can trust. And that guy, in my opinion, is Travion Henderson, who I wouldn't be shocked if he goes in the first round of the NFL draft. Definitely will be off the board by the time the second round comes around. This guy out of of Ohio State is an absolute beast. He runs a 4.43 40 time at the combine. His burst score, 91st percentile. All those things are great. And last year, he was a big play machine. He had 11 carries of 50 plus yards. Let me say that again. Saquon Barkley-esque. 11 carries of 50 plus yards, and he could be a 3-down back. Like, don't let his size at 202 pounds fool you. This guy was one of, if not the best pass protection backs in college football, and probably is the best pass protector in this class. Like, he's going to get on the field to protect, if he lands on Dallas, a Dak Prescott quarterback who's dealt with injuries in the past years. They can trust TreVeyon Henderson on all 3 downs. Remember Rico Dotto last year? This dude never started a game in the NFL, then becomes the Cowboys starter, and what does he go out there and do? He puts up over 1,000 rushing yards, puts up 250 receiving yards. He's going for 1,300 total yards. He looked extremely efficient behind still a quality offensive line, not the best, not the most best it's ever been in the last 10 years, but still a quality offensive line in Dallas. Now you put TreVeyon Henderson, a way better athlete, a way better home run hitter, a better pass protector than Rico Dotto on the field. That I start to like. And let's face it, we talked about it earlier when we were talking about Ted McMillan joining this team. Dallas needs playmakers on offense. They have a nice defensive line, a solid secondary. They need playmakers on offense. Because last year they were just boring. It was like, oh, is CeeDee Lamb going to have 150 yards and the Cowboys still lose by 14? Like, they just need more guys out there. Now, if you're enjoying this breakdown and you want even more fantasy insights like this every single week, I just want to let you know about my free newsletter. You can see it right here, the Fantasy Club. You can join over 40,000 other readers outsmarting their league mates. And here's the thing. It takes less than 4 minutes per week to read. It is 100% free. And like I said, over 40,000 other fantasy football players are already subscribed. It covers everything from fantasy strategy to some under the radar guides to some news that you probably missed that is extremely important and other people aren't talking about it. The only place to talk about it is that free newsletter, and you could join right now totally free with the QR code on the screen or by clicking the link in the description below. And you'll also get some additional perks that I only put in there, like an email course, some rankings for my dynasty leagues, all that type of stuff. I'd love to have you in the community, so you can scan the QR code on the screen right now if you want to get in there, or click that link in the description. Now let's get back to the video. And I want to look at the tight end room. This sounds like super random, but I want to look at the tight end room for the Indianapolis Colts because they ended up losing Kylan Granson this offseason. I believe he signed with the Eagles. So they now have Andrew Ogletree, Mo Alley-Cox, Will Mallory, like a bunch of guys who just aren't going to be difference makers for you on a team with Shane Steichen as their coach, who said that they want a difference-making tight end. Well, insert one Tyler Warren out of Penn State, who in my opinion is the best tight end in this class that has a lot of quality tight ends out there right now. I mean, if you look at this for the Colts last year, their leading tight end on their team, if you scroll all the way down here, was Kylan Granson, who only had 182 receiving yards. This was on a team that had some quarterback problems. Anthony Richardson needed a tight end he could rely on underneath and still couldn't find that guy. Like, they just didn't have a guy. And now Kylan Granson is not even on the team. But Warren would instantly become the starting tight end on this team, and maybe even the number one option ahead of guys like Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. I don't think that would happen, but I wouldn't be shocked. Basically, Warren is extremely consistent. He's a strong blocker. He's versatile. I mean, he could even run the ball. He did that at Penn State at times last year as well, and he's the exact guy that a player like Anthony Richardson needs. Like, if anything happened to Richardson, if he started to struggle and they had to turn the keys over to the castle to Daniel Jones, that helps Warren as well. Because last year, remember Wan'Dale Robinson, top 10 in the NFL in targets per game? Yeah, that's because Daniel Jones was throwing the ball short. He wanted to throw to Robinson. Part of that was also a really bad offensive line from the Giants, but just in general, throughout his entire career, Daniel Jones likes targeting the short to intermediate parts of the field. And if you're not familiar with Warren, I mean, he was just doing things that tight ends don't do at all. Like, he had over 100 receptions last year, over 1,200 receiving yards, a 31% target share on a Penn State team where he was clearly the best playmaker and only playmaker at times in the passing game. He's a legit day one starter, and if he lands on the Colts, he instantly is a top 10 fantasy tight end out the gate. Let's stick at the tight end position because, like I said, there's a lot of good tight ends in this draft class. We can go over to the Chargers, who right now you can see some of their offseason moves. They bring in Mike Williams. Okay, he's currently their number 2 next to Ladd McConkey, most likely. That's not great. Najee Harris is currently their running back, their starter. We'll see what happens. He only signed a 1-year deal in the NFL draft, but they did lose Josh Palmer, who was probably their second best receiver, depending on what you think of Quentin Johnson, third best receiver on the team. They need to bring in some pass catchers, so why not bring in a big piece that you need right now in Colston Loveland, a tight end who is arguably the best. Some people think he's better than Tyler Warren in this draft class out of Michigan, another Big Ten tight end. Honestly, Loveland is like a Harbaugh guy. You think about Harbaugh coming from Michigan, like this is the type of player that he wants. You could have Ladd McConkey working in the slot or out wide, and then Loveland dominating the middle of the field when Ladd is out wide. Perfect. Now, Loveland, the type of player that he is, he's often compared to one George Kittle, and if the landing spot fits here with Justin Herbert, honestly, he could produce like Kittle as soon as year one. This is a big physical tight end. He's 6'6", 248 pounds. He wins over the middle of the field, and honestly, Herbert loves targeting his tight ends to begin with, and he's probably never had a tight end end as good as Loveston's potential could be. Loveston last year had a 28% target share, and this stat that I found on Twitter from Jacob Gibbs, be sure to follow him. He puts out some awesome stats. He said that Colston Loveston was targeted on 39.6, let's call it 40%, of his routes in 2024. That's the highest single season rate recorded by a tight end, basically since this guy Jacob's been tracking data from 2017 to 2024. So that's absolutely insane, which means that he was being targeted 40% of the time. That's how much Michigan's quarterbacks and offenses leaned on him, and he was able to still produce. Honestly, I don't think the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh pass on their potential franchise tight end at pick 22, a guy who will instantly become a red zone and fantasy threat in year one. All right, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans this offseason right here, because they lost their quarterback Mason Rudolph, and they basically didn't bring in anybody. They brought in Brandon Allen. That's not going to be your fix at the quarterback position. I don't think they're going to be sticking with Will Levis after what we saw last year. So I think based on what they did this offseason, they're pretty primed and prepared to take Cameron Ward with the #1 overall pick in the NFL draft. It seems pretty obvious. They canceled their workout with Shedeur Sanders, so unless they're playing some sort of 3D chess, they have the first overall pick. There's no reason to cancel that workout unless you know you're taking Cam Ward. And honestly, it's the right fit. Cam Ward has shown leadership, the flashes to be an elite franchise quarterback, and he's what the Titans need right now, a face of the franchise. It's the perfect fit. He'll get playing time right away, and for fantasy, we like that. We like the idea of him maybe having some mobility and being able to contribute with his legs. And if you look at the players that he'll get to work with in his first year, I think they need to add some weapons here. Like, you can't just have Calvin Ridley out there. I don't think that's going to be enough. Sure, they still have this dual-headed backfield in Tajay Spears who can catch passes, and Tony Pollard, and I do think based on their offseason moves that they're probably going to be a run-heavy team, but you need something else there. Hopefully we see another wide receiver added later on in free agency or in the NFL draft, because Chigakonkwo at tight end and Calvin Ridley isn't enough for me to get super excited about Cam Ward, but at least the playing time will definitely be there. And sticking with the quarterback position, let's look at the Cleveland Browns. They've basically said they're done with Deshaun Watson. This offseason, they lost Jameis Winston. They added Kenny Pickett. Like, swing and a miss is what they called the Deshaun Watson deal this offseason. So I don't think that they want him on their roster heading into this year. And if he is, I don't think they want him seeing the field. So that's where we can enter, arguably, and probably is the most polarizing prospect in this entire NFL draft class. And that's Shedeur Sanders, who honestly, this guy dominated at his pro day. He completed 62 of his 67 passes, only had 5 incompletions, and 3 of those were drop passes. He has the accuracy, the timing, the arm talent, and at times the poise under pressure to be somebody that can work well with his coach, Kevin Stefanski. And he's going to join a really nice situation. Elijah Moore's a free agent. We'll see if they bring him back. But right now it's looking like Jerry Jeudy. You're also going to have out there a wide receiver 2 in Cedric Tillman. And let's not forget one of the best tight ends in the league, especially from an athleticism standpoint and pass catching standpoint, David Njoku. So, I mean, you have 3, maybe 4 if they bring back Elijah Moore or add somebody else. Really solid options to put with Shedeur Sanders, especially in the short areas of the field. David Njoku, depending on who their running back is from a pass catching standpoint, and Jerry Jeudy can help him in those areas of the field. Now, Sanders in 2023 had a terrible offensive line, sacked 50 plus times, but still looked good and poised under pressure. That kind of fell apart in 2024, so we need to see him be able to avoid sacks and basically just be a guy who can hit his throws in rhythm. And if so, I mean, he's going to be able to start for a team. Hopefully the Browns, hopefully that's where he lands. We'll see. That would be my ideal spot, just with that fit with Kevin Stefanski and the playmakers around him. He's not going to have a lot of mobile upside, but maybe could be somebody that can sustain these other weapons for Cleveland. So there's 12 prospects and 12 perfect fits, in my opinion, that could shape the fantasy season for these big-time rookies. Now, some of these guys won't be first-round NFL picks or even first-round fantasy picks. The majority of them outside of Genty probably won't be, but they're still going to make a difference in fantasy. And that reminds me, there's 5 other players in this draft class who probably won't be first-round picks in the NFL draft, but will be big contributors right away, in my opinion, in the NFL. And that video dropped last week. You can check out those 5 prospects right here so you know them before your league mates do.